All right, in this video, I'm going to give you 5 steps to just master anatomy in record time and improve your figure drawings dramatically. And it's the method I use, and it will just drastically help you improve much faster than just learning boring old anatomy. So we'll get right into it. The first step you just have to do, is master how to manipulate form. You need to understand how to take something as simple as a box, and you need to be able to turn that box into basically anything you want, but even something as manipulated as this, which to some extent mimics the pec muscle. All right. So you need to be able to turn this into this. You need to also understand that this actually comes from this. You need to understand that seemingly complex form actually can be derived from simple form. And you need to be able to learn how to manipulate that form, manipulate the contour, the edges, like inflate it, deflate it, taper it, bend it. All those things are very important and very crucial to understand, because that leads into number 2. In number 2, we want to start studying anatomy in compartments. So this is very important as well. We don't want to study the entire human figure. This is something I see people do wrong all the time. And the reason for that is because you actually start with thinking that the fundamental of figure drawing is starting with anatomy. So the only thing you can then think of is to learn the anatomy of the entire body. And this in and of itself is already a wrong approach, because again, you're juggling too many things at the same time. So what does that mean? Well, you want to start compartmentalizing everything that you learn. And if you started with learning how to draw the mannequin, right? That's the first thing you should learn, is, can I understand the mannequin? Can I learn how it is constructed in its simple forms? And then based on that mannequin, we're now going to see how can we make that mannequin look more complex by applying anatomy, or like what we call it, anatomy-informed shapes. So that means that we're going to take something like, let's say, the arm, and we're first going to understand that, okay, the arm is in its simplest form, 2 cylinders. One is tapered and one is just irregular. One has a certain proportion, one has another proportion. And now we're going to take that principle and we're going to learn to just first add the shoulder. So that means that we're going to add, again, a manipulated box for the shoulder. And that shoulder is now combined with the cylinders of the arm. Just like that. That is your first step, right? And this is how you gradually increase that difficulty. So then you start compartmentalizing it and you start studying anatomy that way as well. You start to first understand that the shoulder, or the deltoid in this case, and the way that the bicep and the tricep is represented is just by this simple cylinder. And then what you can do is see, okay, how far can I take that? How far until my understanding breaks, essentially? So can I understand that the arm eventually becomes more of, let's say, the upper arm, instead of it being a cylinder, it eventually becomes more like a tapering cylinder with a bit of edge and contour manipulation, right? Just like that. It's seemingly complex when you have to do this from the start, but once you understand it in its simplicity and know how to manipulate form, then it becomes much easier to draw this resulting form and combine it with the other more complex forms of the shoulder. Point 2 takes me into point 3. It's learning to simplify all of the anatomical parts of the body. So you're not just compartmentalizing everything, you're also trying to simplify the anatomy to your understanding. This is very important. You're trying to simplify the anatomy to your understanding. And this is where the general anatomy that they're trying to teach you really falls short for me. Because what general anatomy is, it's literally what you see in medical books or even, drawing books, is that they give you those Latin names, very hard to remember. Like, why even learn the names? The only thing the names are good for as a teacher is so you can flex that you have the knowledge, or you're really interested in it. I am really interested in anatomy because I like to learn about it. I'm also very much into sports, so that helps me with just understanding the human body. But if you're trying to get to better figures and anatomy is sort of standing in your way and you don't really care about anatomy, you should be much smarter about how you approach learning anatomy. And so this is where simplifying the anatomy comes in. You're no longer trying to learn the difficult muscle insertions and all of that. No, because you now have that knowledge, of how to manipulate form, and you know how to learn in compartmentalized efforts, meaning that you only focus on the arm, or you only just focus on the upper arm, you only focus on the torso. This is essentially how we've set up our anatomy course or anatomy road, is like you focus on one particular thing at the time. You master that, great, then you can move on. And so you do that, you focus on that, and you focus on how you can learn to use that form manipulation and represent a certain muscle. Right? Then you start to play with the form. Then you create an arm that looks more stylistic, that looks more exaggerated. But you can only do that when you really understand the form itself, not the muscles. Drawing very stylized characters and drawing very stylized anatomy has little to do with understanding the names of the muscles. It has everything to do with understanding its simple form and its structure and how you manipulate that form. So if you do not have a good way to understand form, like I say in point 1, then you're essentially going to have a hard time, or you're going to get very frustrated very fast because you're trying to do too many things at the same time. That's why I said, and that's what I keep repeating, is we try to take away as many variables as we can to better understand everything as we go forward. And then it's more of a compounding effect. When you understand one or two things, and those things actually contribute to number 3, you're learning so much faster than if you're juggling between, oh, I'm doing perspective, and then I'm doing a bit of complicated anatomy, and then I'm doing a bit of complicated composition, right? And this is what I don't like about when people or teachers online say, oh, you need to learn these fundamentals, and then those fundamentals never tie into each other. They're very separate from each other. That doesn't work. That's why for me, the actual fundamentals is the construction. Construct, deconstruct, and everything else will follow. As a last sort of point that will just be more of a practical application of everything you've learned, not only just drawing anatomy, is try to then use abstract form and reverse engineer anatomy into it, or the simplified anatomical shapes into it. This is more and closer towards drawing from imagination, is where you start with something graphically pleasing, and then you use everything you learned from volume and perspective manipulated forms, and you try to reverse engineer that into that 2D abstract shape and see if you can actually turn it into something believable. Because this is your natural progression. This is what you eventually want to get at, right? You want to make something abstract and you want to turn it into something believable. You want to do a scribble and you want that scribble to turn into a character. That's essentially what you want to do. So in order to do that, you need to also practice that. So these 5 steps, if you follow them really well, you will really skyrocket your understanding of anatomy and form in general much faster, and you'll be able to more quickly understand anatomy itself as a whole. You'll no longer be confused about the names and the insertions. It's just more about how can I fit these shapes together, right? Knowing the names is a flex, but it's an unnecessary flex if you want to draw characters from imagination. So keep that in mind. That's all you need to know. These 5 steps will serve you a lifetime. Make sure that you practice them as well. It's one of the reasons that our Artwod roadmap gives people that step-by-step progression so that you practice it on a daily basis. Because if you don't do this consistently, you'll always lose much more information than you actually want. So even if it's 10 minutes a day is much better than 4 hours in 1 week. And it will become easier to repeat those steps as well if you do that on a daily basis. Manipulating form, learning a little piece of anatomy, seeing how you can simplify that anatomy into these manipulated forms, then increasing the difficulty over time, and then trying to create abstract shapes and make them believable with the thing you just learned. All right? If you keep that in mind, you'll be a master of anatomy in no time. Happy drawing.